Oh, hey, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Efficiency Bitch podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Leone. This podcast is dedicated to all the women out there who are aspiring to have a career while raising a family. And bitch? Well, that's more than a name and even an attitude. We use it as an acronym. It's for bank, inbox, time, connection, and harmony. Each episode is labeled according to the correct topic so that you can efficiently find the topic that you're looking for. I'm here to tell you, you can have your cake and eat it too. The trick is finding efficient ways to get through the have-tos so that you can make room for your best life. I can show you how. Let's get started. Hey, welcome to the Efficiency Bitch podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Leone. Today, we're going to talk all about C for connection. I'm really excited to introduce this guest. I've known her for a very long time. We were trying to do the math. I think we landed like 12 or 13 years. Sabrina Ramirez and I worked together at Four Seasons Hotels many, many years ago. And she is the best of the best when it comes to teaching people how to relate to customers, connect to customers. And it's all about the details, as she's going to tell you. Sabrina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here finally and be able to talk to you. But yes, we go way back, and we'll keep some of those secrets to ourselves.
Good idea. Good idea.
There we go.
For sure. So Sabrina, tell us a little about who you are, where you come from, and how you do life.
Yes. So I am born and bred in SoCal. Very excited. I always bring that up because it's a good connection piece for me off the bat when it's like, oh, you're California. Oh, you're SoCal. Oh, let's talk sports. Let's go for it. So I love bringing that up. I am Mexican by birth. My father was born in Mexico, and my mother is also Mexican. So I'm very proud of my traditions and heritage there. And so as far as me as a business person, as Melissa said, really, I had before Four Seasons, I had also worked in some type of hospitality. But before that, actually, I actually really thought I was going to be a teacher. My mom actually was a bilingual teacher in a community where it was mostly Spanish speaking. And so I ventured into that for a while. I was substituting. I really thought I was going to do it because I love teaching. I do love that piece of making people feel confident and that moment of like, oh, right. And so I knew already I loved that. I just didn't know exactly how I was going to put it into play. And while teaching wasn't going to be my field because there's too much red tape, honestly. I wanted to teach in a certain way and I wanted to do things and there was too many no's. So it's like, no, this isn't for me. So I stumbled upon Four Seasons. And I actually started my career as a concierge and quickly knew that HR and training was my world. That was a very strong connection for me to feel. My degree's in sociology, so I've always been interested in people and how we interact with one another. And so very quickly, it was evident that was the direction I wanted to go because it brought in that teaching piece too.
Yeah.
So I worked for Four Seasons for almost 9 years and 3 different properties, and I loved it, and I just wanted to do it differently. And the differently part was for myself and be able to work with teams, but be able to travel and not be in an office at the same time and do the same things over and over and over. And so that's where I ventured out. And that was in about 2014. So almost 10 years later, I've been on my own. My company it's about the details. And all we really do is focus on small businesses as well, but also things in the hospitality world. And most recently, we're really focused on service. And so I am a proponent of how do we give proper service, and it doesn't necessarily mean luxury, even though that is a place where I definitely do a lot of training, but it doesn't necessarily need to be luxury. It's whatever the vibe that you want of your business. And what does that look like, from a doctor's office to a medi spa to your hairstylist to, of course, a restaurant, coffee shop, anything like that, and of course hotel. So I have been spending a lot of my time in hotels with amazing employees, really just, again, getting them to think differently and how we communicate and make connections with people, how that
It's such a huge thing, right? I mean, I've chosen businesses over the front desk person at a school, over the front desk person at a doctor's office, over the front desk person at my nail salon. Like, who you come in contact with at the very beginning and how they treat you and how they look at you and how you connect with them makes you want to go back or not.
Absolutely. There's no question. You become loyal, or the way you're communicating makes people disloyal immediately. There's no question. Everything that I think we're going to talk about today is all about communication, connection, and how it feels.
Yeah.
And really what that power is.
So let's boil it down a little bit. Tell me a little bit how you think communication and connection really impacts business relationships. So any business, pick a business, right? And you can use that as a specific example or speak very generally, but how do the communications or the signals that we give other people impact our business?
I mean, there's no question it is probably one of the biggest impacts. And I think one of the biggest impacts that people don't even realize if you're not looking at it from an outward place. So in my opinion, the way that we interact, even our nonverbal cues and our verbal, right? So someone walks into your business, there needs to be some kind of welcome. I need to feel immediately like you care that I have arrived into your space and that it feels warm and that you've hopefully even been expecting me. And I think that there's also a piece of rapport, like everything about business, whether it's our businesses that we're running or a business that we're looking at, is about rapport and relationships. And what does that look like? Everybody wants to feel like they're going somewhere that they're valued. And if you do not feel valued, if you feel like you're just a number, if you feel like you're just not anything about it, then you're missing out on even small little impacts of walking into a place and ordering a cup of coffee. Yeah. And how just that can make a difference based on if it's like a latte. Yes. And yes, you could put it in, get it right, give me your receipt. And then you've said nothing to me. Maybe I've even tried to communicate with you and make a comment about maybe I like your hair, or I like your nails or something. And if there is no type of interaction, and then you're the only person in there, and then they're like, Sabrina, right? Everything about it, your body language, your facial expressions, you do not care.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways that we're communicating, even when we're not speaking.
It's interesting too, right? Like I always wonder when I have those circumstances, and they happen all the time. The good ones happen all the time, but so do the bad ones. And you leave there thinking, man, you hate your job. Like you must really be pissed off today. Like you automatically assume well, at least that's the way I take it. Some people might take it as you don't like me. I take it as something's wrong with you. But why don't business owners train on this? Because it seems like common sense to treat your customers well, but why do you think managers don't do that training? Why do you think that missing link is?
I think there's a disconnect because business owners sometimes get wrapped up in the minutia of all of the other things that they need to do. And a lot of companies that I go into and work in, it's like, well, we don't have time, Sabrina, to train. So of course, I always have a response that, well, if we don't have time to train, we're missing a big part of what we're supposed to do, because a lot of times you just also put someone out there who's not ready, and then they're not building confidence, they're not good at their job, and then eventually they're going to quit. And so the time that you could have invested in that person could have made it so that they felt in a certain way, and now you're starting over. So don't give me the reason that time is not the factor. But I think honestly, everyone is an expert at something. And when you go into a business, a lot of times, you're an excellent chef. So you don't know anything about what the front side looks like. And if you're not hiring the right people to help you with what that should look like, feel like, let's, role play it out, then you're missing it. And I really think it's honestly that you just don't know. You just don't have the time. And even if people are giving you that feedback, you don't necessarily know how to fix it without the proper people in place to do it.
I think that the training that Leanne and I, my business partner, and I had from Four Seasons, from the hospitality industry in general, but specifically luxury hospitality. And I really think Four Seasons is one of the companies that does it best, them and Disney. And I had the opportunity to work for Disney as well. The training, the details of, you will look your customer in the eye the moment they walk in the door. You will answer the phone within 3 rings. You will say hello to them within 20 seconds. I mean, that's how specific and pointed that type of training can be, right? I think that has been our key differentiator as accountants for small business owners, because accountants are traditionally not trained to be customer service oriented. And I will answer a text message within an hour of getting it from a client, or at least I try to, where half the CPAs I work with don't respond to you for 6 months. So it's interesting how just that little piece of training on responsiveness is a huge deal. And it's something as a mother I'm working on with my kids too. My 12-year-old will often ignore me when I ask her a question, or she'll grunt at me or nod her head. And I'm like, you need to look me in the eyes and say yes or no.
Absolutely.
Training 101, right? And are those the type of things that you're working with businesses on, is teaching, retraining, or documenting some of those very specific details?
Yes, definitely. So to go back to what you were saying about your 12-year-old, I mean, that's all about acknowledgement, right? And that's again
Mhm.
going back to how we feel. If we're not acknowledged, you walk into a space and nobody looks up at you, or even if they're with another client, just some eye contact makes all the
Yeah.
difference. Just saying, yeah, I'll be right with you. I'm just finishing what I'm doing. Obviously, the person can see, but I've walked into places, they're with another person. I've walked through it. Nobody even looks at me, acknowledges, and I walk right out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I already know what I'm going to get for the remainder of this interaction. So I'm not interested in that. So,
Mm.
so to answer the question, I do a lot of foundational training in
Mhm.
communication, in intuitiveness, in problem solving and empathy. But one of my favorite pieces, once we have a foundation and once I've trained you, is the observation stage.
Mm.
So I love being able to just sit back wherever I am. If it's a coffee shop, if it's a restaurant, of course I like them to not know who I am before I do this.
Right.
So I'll call if I need to call. I'll do like an online form, whatever I need to do before so I can hear their voice, I can hear what I'm going to expect. But then I observe. So even when they already do know me, of course, I'll use a hotel example. I will sit in the lobby in a place that I can see the doorman, I can see the valet, I can see the bellman, I can literally hear them interacting with the guests, with the concierge, with the front desk. And I will, take it in stages where I'm just observing and I'm just copiously taking lots of notes. What am I seeing? What am I seeing? What am I seeing? What are the themes? What are we not doing? What are we not acknowledging? What does our posture look like? Where are we leaning? Are we saying hello to everyone who's walking in? Are we making even just quick gestures that are impactful? Do we know their names? So I'm just making lots of notes initially, and then I'll do that for several days, several weeks, depending on what it is. And sometimes after the guest walks away, I will walk up to the team if there's no one else in the lobby and ask questions immediately, because I know that sometimes we'll forget. Oh, I can't remember that reaction, that interaction. But it's also I will immediately also change things if I need to on
Mhm.
the I found out really quickly in a hotel that the language they were using, they were telling the guests to hit the key card onto in the elevator. They were just saying, just place it on the key card reader and then hit your floor. And then all of a sudden I sat there and I started to see all these guests come back. And I'm like, what are they coming back? So of course I kind of walk up so I can hear better. And I found out that it's because their key wasn't working. Well, it wasn't that their key wasn't working. It was that we were not telling them that it had to turn green. But it has to turn green. You have to hold it there and then press the button. And I figured that out in less than 5 minutes, Melissa.
Right.
And
What a small detail, but huge piece for the customer, right?
long walk. It was a long walk all the way down, and then these poor guests all the way back. There's also lots of things missing. There was no apology. It was almost like, oh, of course we'll fix it for you, but it wasn't like it was our fault. It was their fault somehow.
Mhm.
Instantly I was able to pick up on, whoa, how many times has this been, how long has this been happening? I figured it out in 5 minutes. So how
Yeah.
different, we thought we've been telling them right this whole time. No one figured it out. And so it's really important what words we use and how we describe it and how we say it. So yes, I mean, I absolutely do talk about the basics of our posture, our facial expressions, our eye contact, the presence, and showing that we're the person in front of us is valued and the most important person there too. Obviously, I talk about the phone and what we're talking about on the phone as well. But yes, there's no question that every single part of that is important. And every team that I work with is totally different
Yeah.
on what I do, what my impact is, what my goal is. Sometimes we think my goal is one thing and we can figure out it's not, and we need to step back. And of course, everything is in collaboration with the managers, with the team, with the business owner on what it needs and what they want it to feel like. It's not how I
Yeah.
want it to feel like. I can absolutely, help with that. But let's talk about what you do want it to feel like and what that model is. And then I'm here to help make some impacts in
Well,
that.
those relationships are so important, not just with employee and customer, but between employee and employee and manager and manager and manager and manager and spouse. I mean, those human pieces, those connection points really have a huge impact on our ability to communicate. I mean, I've said this on the podcast a couple of times. If I intend to communicate something to you, but it's not sent in the way that you can receive it, it didn't happen. It just simply did not exist because you didn't receive what I was sending. And people will often say, well, that's not what I meant in conversations or in conflict. That's not what I intended. That's not what I meant. But the way that the receiver picks it up is legit all that matters. So how do you come up with some detail points to make sure that it lands the way that it's received? I mean, I love your example about the key card in the elevator, because that's a very simple black and white answer of they were telling them the right thing, but they weren't telling them the complete thing that made them, the receiver, completely understand the task. So how do you change language for people, employees, managers, spouses, whatever? What's the right way to start to manage some of those pieces in our lives?
Well, I think it comes back to, one, do we even really understand how powerful our communication is into the connection of what we do?
Mm-hmm.
And how, when somebody is in a conversation with you, when they walk away, what is it that they are truly feeling? Did they feel heard? Did they feel understood? Did they feel that you were uninterested? Did they feel ignored? What is the emotion that is attached? So once you start looking at it from a way of, I'm affecting an actual emotion. You walk out of anywhere you go and you're thinking, did I like it or did I not? And it's connected to an emotion that we're having. So once we're first able to define that everything that we're doing is really like emotional and connection, and how we're speaking, and what everything about that we're not even saying matters, and that the word choice also matters, the tone of voice matters, the pace at which we're speaking matters, then I think then you can start evaluating yourself and figuring out a little bit of, what am I projecting? What is my face saying that my words are not saying? And there's always going to be conflict in our personal and professional lives, but I think the biggest piece is us understanding how the other person felt. So what is the empathy? And let's talk it out. What did you understand? What did you interpret that I, like, to go back to what you said, I didn't mean it that way, but interpreted that way. So can you help me? And this is where practice, I mean, we have to practice things. These things just come naturally. So can you tell me what exactly what I said or how it came across that made you feel that way? Because this is how I actually intended it.
Yeah. You didn't tell me that the green light was supposed to come on. That was the part that was missing, right? So you're looking for that portion of the conversation, in the analogy, so to speak, of what was missing. The missing part was wait for the green light. It was a big part.
That was a huge part. That was
a huge part. Did you ever see the Friends episode where Ross gets spray tanned like 8 times because the communication is off? He gets spray tanned on the front of his body 8 times. Did you ever see this?
No.
Oh my gosh, Sabrina, you gotta watch it. I'll find the episode. I'll send it to you. There's an episode of Friends, the TV show, because I'm old and I liked it. And Ross goes to a spray tan place and the guy gives him kind of crappy instructions. Like, he gives him some basic instructions and he ends up getting the tan. So at the end of the episode, he's like black on the front and white on the back. And it's hysterical, but it's all about that little detail, right? That's missing. And in one circumstance, he doesn't hear it, but the other circumstance, the guy doesn't say it. And so I think it's those specific examples that you can work through when you're listening to this with your managers, with your employees, with your spouses, with your children. If you keep saying something to somebody over and over, or you keep seeing the same response, like a clients are coming back to get their key cards fixed, there's probably a missing link somewhere in the communication that is impacting the way that the customer is receiving it, or your spouse is receiving it, or whatever. I think that's really powerful. Tell me a little bit about the pandemic, because I'm starting to see in my CFO space a lot of places that are actually finally starting to shift back from we're in the post-pandemic world. However, not everything's caught up. What are some of the things that you have seen since the pandemic and the shutdown, and how are people interacting with each other now that they're fully back in person?
Well, I think it was interesting. I think that to go back a bit, we took for granted this human connection and this conversation and the way we communicate before the pandemic hit. And so all of a sudden that changed. And I think we didn't know how it was going to affect our mental health and all of those other pieces to what that was like, that we were no longer now social, because as humans we're super social, and the communication is what connects us. And yes, we were creative with all these different ways, but we were no longer having these impactful and purposeful interaction experiences in this particular in service, right? So I think what I found when I first went back on site, which was like mid 2021, and it was really interesting. It was awkward, and it was, wait a minute, what is going on? Like how people don't want to physically get close to you. Of course, we're still masked at this point, and I think that also was such a big and interesting thing about how we communicate. You can't see someone smile the rest of their face. There are people who got hired and we'd never seen the other half of their face, right? And it's like, how, oh my gosh, you didn't know how important our nonverbal cues were in our face and in our expectations and how we speak to one another. And so that was really interesting. But what happened is people no longer knew how to be social and how to have this conversation that we'd always taken for granted. So actually, that was one of the first things I did that they asked me. They're like, we need to figure out a way to remedy this and a way to give people the confidence again to go in. Because we even had interim dining servers who were like, wait, what? You want me to go back in the room? You want me to talk to people? Like, they were scared, and not of COVID, but because it's not like riding a bike and all of a sudden you're going to know how to do it again. Yeah. So I created a class that all about communication. And one of the things also that they wanted to work on was a lot of slang in the hotel. And so, yes, I could stand up there and talk about why we should not use this word and why we should use this word. But everybody, especially as adults, we want to know why. So I changed the way that we thought we were going to do the class into a way of how our words matter and what we say is impactful, and how that's communication. And then, of course, we literally had to walk through, how do we give service and what are we going to say? And I think it was just so interesting to see how that came back, people looking at each other in the eyes again and not looking down or not, it was a really fascinating experience, honestly, to be back and to see what had happened to so many people, and there, of course, there's stories. And then now it's like, oh yeah, like this is, especially in our hospitality world, like who we are matters, and the guests want to be involved, and that is an actual connection experience. And they wanted it even more. The guests were by themselves for a long time too, so everybody was craving this human interaction, but it was this weird moment of like, we don't know how to give it, we don't know how to say it, we don't know what to do, we don't know how to say, like our body gestures weren't even the same. So there was a huge shift, and we had to go back a ways to get them to understand the power that we all have, and why it was important, and we lost it, and how do we bring it back.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so many different pieces to human connection. And I love that you're bringing this into the business world, because it can often be missed. I mean, you and I growing up in luxury hospitality certainly got a lens of why people are willing. I mean, we talk about this in the hotel industry all the time. The beds are the beds, right? I mean, maybe one's got a little nicer sheets on it, but what they're buying, the luxury element, is how they are treated, how they feel when they walk in the door. So if you're a business owner and you're looking to increase your prices on something, consider how you're training your employees and how they are treating your staff. And you may be able to raise your rates because you have a better service. And call Sabrina, she'll teach you how to do it. Absolutely. And on that note, Sabrina, why don't you share with the audience how they can find you, how they can continue the conversation?
Definitely. So of course, I'm on all the major social media. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm at @about the details, and then Facebook and LinkedIn. It's about the details. You can also see me personally. I'm Sabrina Ramirez, and I'm also on YouTube, so you can find me there. So lots of different ways. I do lots of reels, so I like to give, really quick tips for, what you can do to enhance your business, different customer service things. They can send me things that they want me to see. I'm happy to do the reels in person, but I love being on site with teams and can really make some big impacts into anybody's business, for the matter of the industry. So
that's awesome. Sabrina, thank you so much for being here today. And for all of you listening, thank you so much for coming back to the Beehive. If this is your first time, welcome. I hope you hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss next week's episode. And until then, I'm your host, Melissa Leon. See ya. Well, that wraps it up. Thank you so much for listening. If you're new around here, please be sure to leave us a review on any podcast platform you're listening to. And you can always reach out to me to let me know what topics you're interested in hearing about, or maybe telling me someone you think would be great for the show. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at EfficiencyBee. Until next time, see ya!